There we go.
Hey everyone, Yan Zhao back again, special Sunday edition. Today we have the new writing phenomena. Who's writing PHENOMENOVA? Vaughn Coleman.
How you doing? How you doing? It's been an interesting week. It's been a good week, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, so far your campaign is crushing it.
Yeah.
As a first time creator, a lot of people are it's like that 5-figure sales mark that a lot of people just really, really want to get to. And you are really close right now.
Yeah.
So first of all, how did you get into comics?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I got into comics, pretty. I guess I got into comics. So I started. I think it was like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie and the Justice League animated show that first got me into superheroes. And from there, I didn't get into fully reading comics, although I was always into the lore and reading up on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I finally started, I think it was after Arkham City came out and I was watching the animated series reruns when I was in 6th grade. And I was like, you know what? I got to dive into the comics. I've been a Batman fan for so long. And so I read Batman Hush, first comic I ever read. And from there, I became a fan and I would do more and more. And I would dip in and out here and there. And then when I was at film school, I was always into comics, but wasn't always actively reading it. And then when I was at film school, for some reason, I caught the bug again, but better than ever. And I was reading Claremont's X-Men run. Well, I started with Giant Size X-Men #1, and I was just amazed by the way they would just do story after story after story. And I just kind of decided I had the superhero idea that I had ever since I was, younger. And I decided, let's really dive into that. Let's do that as a comic book. Because they can get all these big budget, crazy ideas without having to worry about, studio approval and everything. And then I found out more about the indie comic scene. And I was like, yeah, let's get into it. And since then, I've just been working hard and trying to get my ideas out there. And this is an idea I've had for a very long time that's evolved and evolved and evolved. And here it is now.
Nice. So, you mentioned you went to film school. For some reason, it seems like, comics came around in the 1930s. Film is a little older, but it seems like through all of comics history and through much of film history, there's dovetailing and crossing in and out of comics and film. What do you think makes them such a good pair, like a PB and J almost?
Well, I think it's a number of things. I think people speaking for me personally, I like visual storytelling. I like really cool, even though I have no artistic talent. And even I also I'm not good at cinematography, right? I'm not good at the technical visual stuff. I can tell when something is pretty, but I still always think in a visual way. My brain doesn't make that technical connection. It's just not me. It's like I need someone to talk through to get to that point, but I've always saw things in a visual way. And I think because comics and film are both a visual medium, it's like the simplest answer first. But then I also do think, often when I'm reading a comic, I'll be like, ooh, how would this translate into film? I think film is a medium, whether it be animated or live action, where we kind of almost, I often, if I'm into something, even if I'm listening to a horror story or reading something, I'll be like, how would that translate to film? So I feel like my brain still goes there a lot to film. I would say, yeah, I think people naturally want to see things manifest into movement. It's just something people always want to see, whether it be animation or film. I think that's just something, especially once you have a visual design, you're like, oh, I want to see that move. I want to see that have a voice. I want to hear it. I want to see it in action. I think that's kind of where it goes. I think also comics are a great way of getting not just ideas out there, because you can do that with novels and stuff, even cheaper, much cheaper, but getting ideas out there in a visual way. And I think that's why when we see film, it's like it's almost like you're trying to get them to it's also why I think the same reason why cosplayers are popular. People are trying to replicate that fantasy, the genius of an artist on the screen or in reality. And I think that's part of it.
That makes sense. I hadn't really thought about that in the cosplay sense, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is people just kind of want to see things manifest in a visual way, in a visual medium.
Hmm. And so you mentioned you had this story since you were much younger. What is it about the superhero genre that has really, kept your interest from then until now?
God, I mean, I would say I've thought about this a lot because I really did when I was writing it down. I'm a big fan of boiling things down to their core, right? Of
Hmm.
taking an idea and just really getting to it. And I thought, well, why do I love superheroes? Why do I keep coming back to this idea? Why do I keep coming back to the genre? And I made a list actually. And I'd be like, okay, well, I love the idealism. I love the bright and colorful costumes. I love the idea that it's hope and optimism. I think what it boils down to is they're like the best of humanity, and then the villains are like the worst of humanity. It's kind of like it's like taking what's in here, taking the best and worst of it.
Hmm.
And also, I think it allows so much creativity. Like when I think of an idea, I'm like, how can I put this in my superhero world? And that's not to say I have plenty of non-superhero ideas, but I think in general with Phenomenova, I'm creating a world where I can do in a story where I could do so many things and mix so many genres. And I think it's just the endless garden of creativity is a part of it. And I think also that it makes people's lives better. When I was little, uh, to me personally, to get personal for a second, like I lost my dad when I was a kid, and I remember feeling very angry at the world, and it was like I needed a role model, and superheroes gave me something. Um, they showed me that you could turn that tragedy into something good, and that there could be good people that would fight evil and fight justice. And they would teach me these lessons. I remember even when I'd stand up to bullies, I'd think, what would Batman do? And it sounds cheesy, but listen, there's good lessons to be had here. And I think superheroes really drive those home. I think there's so much that's special about this genre that needs to be uplifted and continued on. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, that I think you're right. I think that there's something happened when we hit like industrialization and sort of close to modern society where the Herculeses and all the old classic demigods and whatnot, they just sort of fell away for some reason. Like they didn't seem like they meshed in with current life.
Right.
And for me, like the superheroes, when they're at their best, like they're filling that role.
Absolutely. I think that the echoes of something that came earlier, and I think that was a theme I wanted to drive home in my comic is the echoes. That's why the World War III idea that it's set after World War III was something that kind of came later, and then adding that the dad was a war hero. These were all kind of reinforcing ideas that I guess I felt deep down, which is why I do encourage writers to really dig down to the core of their ideas, and often you'll find something that reinforces that core that makes it even better. I'm so glad I rewrote this and thought about this as much as I did because the story became so much better for it.
So in your process, like how long, well, you mentioned you had this since a kid, but like since you were serious about doing this, now as an adult, like how long did that process take?
Years. A long time. Long time.
Uh, do you think now that you've got this first one out, like you sort of understand the process better and you think you
Yes, the
could?
second one will come out, I think, much faster. God, I made because I'm trying everything. That means I'm going to make
Mhm.
tons of mistakes, and things take very long. I remember I found a note from years ago that was like, "Oh, have issue 5 out by the end of the year," and I'm like, "Oh God, wow, that didn't
Uh,
happen." But if I'll have issue 1 out by the end of this year. 2 years moves, but I've written issues, and I'm going to go back to issue 2. But I'm very proud of what I've written and what I've done and what I've accomplished. And yeah, I mean, I think in general, I've got some good stuff. And I think that yes, absolutely, things will come out faster. 100%.
all right. So Phenomenova, issue number 1, Lightning Strikes. First of all, 68-page book. For your first book, it sounds pretty ambitious.
Oh, yeah.
How did you sort of like? Did you write the story and it just ended up at 68 pages, or were you like, oh, I have to? You had a target page number in mind?
So I probably would not have gone for such a high page count if I didn't feel that it was necessary for the story. So I had written. It was initially I had planned on doing a giant size issue when I was planning out the plot points and writing the script, and then I had pitched it to someone who was like, "Yeah, well, why don't we just do the first issue? Can easily be like 3." So I did 3, and then when it ended up, I decided I wasn't publishing, or when publishing didn't work out, and I decided I was just going to take it independent. I decided to smash it back because I was like, there's a certain plot point I want to hit by the end of issue. If someone's going to buy this new IP, I want to really sell them on it, and I think this is the best point to hit to get there. So I decided that I was going to do that, and so I did. I decided I wanted to hit this point, like really cover my main hero's main origin story. It is going to evolve into a team book. PHENOMENOVA would be the name of it, but I decided I wanted to cover my main character's origin, at least this portion. I decided I wanted it to be kind of like an ongoing, like that he hasn't. I had decided later on that I actually wanted him to really grow into his costume.
Okay.
Why he has a makeshift costume in issue 1, that he has a name, Galvanized, that's really cool, but it's a name that's way cooler than he deserves almost. And so he's kind of growing into his. I wanted it to be like, imagine he has these, puts on these shoes that are way too big for him, and now he has to grow into them. You know, he puts on a name, and he aspires to be like. That's why if you see this visual of this hero flying in the dragon, it's like that's who he's aspiring to be. And right now he's a 15-year-old who barely has powers that work. And so it's like he is stepping into something that's way too big for him. But there's nobility in that, but it's also he needs to not be a total moron. And he's learning both. So his first mission, he rushes in to stop a heist at a nuclear reactor and finds himself in way over his head. I wanted to like, again, there's nobility in that, but it's also, again, kid, what are you doing? Is kind of what I'm going for.
Is this a world where there's already a lot of superheroes, or is he kind of like the only one?
No, there
as
are
far
other
as they know.
superheroes.
Okay.
So there are. So it's like when he gets his powers, it's like that's a thing in the culture where it's like, oh, I could be a superhero. So it's I decided that I wanted it to be there are other superheroes, but you could still focus on him. You know, it didn't need to be like it wanted it to be a focused story. Just because there are other superheroes in the world doesn't mean that I can't have self-contained stories, right? I think there's definitely a trend, especially now where it's like there's a shared universe. We need to remind you every 5 seconds. Like, no, you don't. All right, I have a shared universe with like 7 billion people. They don't cross over into my life all the time. You know, I have my own story, and it's kind of like that. Now he's he's crossing over into things that weren't his thing, and so now what we're going to see after issue 1 is, okay, now he's put himself in the crosshairs of this villain. Now has to train right away because he's already decided he wants to be a superhero. So because he's decided to rip the Band-Aid off, it's gotten worse. And he is a good kid, but he's also impulsive by nature. Now, giving someone like that super speed is not good, and he will face the consequences. But he's a good guy deep down, but he's a hothead, and he's a daredevil, but he's brave. But again, just because you're brave and heroic doesn't make, if he dies right away before he gets his powers and everything, okay, is he a hero or is he just an idiot? Well, he could be a hero, but did he save anyone? You know. And so that's kind of what I wanted to play with is acknowledging the realities and the harshness of being a hero while still having those ideals. And I think that there's this weird thing where we're either making these characters that are perfect at everything right out the gate, or we're doing these cynical takes that's like, yeah, see, being a hero really sucks and we should all just be sad. And it's like, no, there's an area there that's called there's an area in between there that we could live in, you know?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was just watching Invincible this past weekend.
Oh, I've been
Uh,
meaning to read that.
yeah, I missed it when it came out a few years ago, and I don't know how I got onto it, but it was so. In some ways, it was so disappointing because of that cynicism.
Mm.
It's like it almost reminded me of the 1990s, where like everything had to be super sad, and where it's like this kid who gets superpowers, he can't have any good days.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, Peter has that. Peter Parker has
Hmm.
said I'm the first name. That's what happens when you get to know the character. Yeah, Peter. But I watched the first season of Invincible. I liked it. I think there was some stuff like some agenda stuff that I was like, really,
Yeah.
that clearly wasn't there in the material. Um, but overall, I did like. I felt that it had still an idealism in there. I didn't feel that it was like as much like being a super. It felt like there's the harsh reality. This is to me at least. I haven't watched the
Hmm.
rest. I haven't read the rest, but it felt to me. I liked it because it felt like it was acknowledging the harshness of a superhero while still having all the light. So it was like the ideals almost felt stronger because they're pushed against something bad, whereas Watchmen is more like, and the boys are like everything sucks.
Yeah. I think I watched about 15 minutes of The Boys before I was like, yeah, no,
See,
not
I
gonna.
I muscled through season 3. Ah, God, that was miserable. Season 3 just felt like a giant lecture, and it was pro cancel culture too, like openly pro
Mhm.
cancel culture. And I was like, yeah, I'm not supporting this anymore. And then people are surprised, like, wait a minute, when did it get like? I'm like, what do you mean? It's been like this. I loved season 1. I loved season 1. Um, but season 2, I don't. It was losing me bit by bit, and then when they basically implied that anyone who cares about um culture is a Nazi, I'm like, okay. It was like you're very subtle writing.
Yeah, I
When it's
couldn't.
good, it's good, but they lose the part. You could tell the partisanship shows because they have good ideas, but then they'll you could just tell that they just have people that are very one-sided on the writers team, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, well, it is Amazon,
Yeah.
and that's a problem. But yeah, I don't. But for me, it was even more fundamental. Like in the first, 5 minutes when that speedster runs through that woman and turns her into just a red cloud of blood. It's like, oh, I don't think I want to watch shows where that happens. And then there was like the sexually assaulting the new female member of the team. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, these are not the superheroes I want to watch.
No, I get it. The thing is, when the first couple times I saw the trailer, I
Mhm.
hated the look of the show. I ended up giving it a shot because of what enough friends recommended it to me. But even the speeds, I will say it was like ugh, like when the speedster runs through the girlfriend, gave me a
Yeah.
because it just feels so wrong. And I think that's why I kind of liked it for a while. But the thing is, stuff like that doesn't. I think one of the things too that made me love superheroes is that okay, they offer something that nothing else has, where you can go for 100 or so issues and have it not be fresh. Like I have read 16
Mhm.
years of Claremont, and I'm getting towards the end. I don't want it to end because it's like it's like the never-ending battle is what I
Yeah.
like. It's the never-ending battle of good, and when everything is so murky, you can only spend so much time there before you just get sad and upset. And I think having a character that's always trying to do the right thing, people are like, oh well, they won't reach their goals, and that's not the point. The point is the nobility in trying. You'll never get everything you want in life, but you're going to keep trying anyway. You'll never hit that perfect ideal, but you're going to keep
Yep.
trying anyway. And I think that's why superheroes, especially the underdog ones, really resonate. I think okay, the mutants have not achieved the perfect life, but they're getting there. Daredevil, oh my god, Batman, you think he can rid Gotham of crime? Good luck, but he's going to keep trying anyway. And I think that there's something so noble about that really makes this genre special. Yeah, Garth Ennis. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. I don't know exactly what happened, but like Watchmen is, similar in tone. Although I kind of wonder about Watchmen, like how much of that is because Alan Moore is not an American. Like, I kind of wonder if like this whole superhero thing hits differently for people on other continents.
Maybe, but I don't know because I see a lot of that stuff here too. I mean, neither is Garth Ennis. I've met Garth Ennis, and it's funny. He wears the leather jacket in person, and he does hate superheroes. So it's like, like you do. But yeah, I heard his Punisher run is great, but I'm not. Is not heroes are bad, but people are complicated. Yeah, Watchmen is that.
Yeah.
I do think rewatching it, you could tell Alan Moore was trying to get you to hate Rorschach, and I was like, I can't. I don't hate him. I know you were trying to get me to come to my own conclusion. He was. What I like about the book is that it's like you can come to your own conclusions. That he writes in a nuanced enough way. But the problem is he got angry later on in life because the conclusion everyone comes to is that Rorschach is better than everyone.
Good guy,
he's like, you're not supposed to. Like, yeah, you are supposed to come to your own conclusions. But he got mad that people didn't come to the conclusion that he came
that he wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. So like because it's supposed to be like a horrifying thing when he like burns the pedophile alive, and I'm like, you go, dude.
Oh, that's a good point from John. Also realize England's greatest hero is Judge Dredd, a super fascist cop.
Is Captain Britain not that? I guess he's not that big in Britain.
I don't know. That's a good question. I heard he was like back in the 80s when Excalibur was around.
That was like late 80s.
Yeah. And I think it really only lasted a few years before it sort of puttered out. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. My favorite part of the whole Alan Moore thing is how he keeps going on about like people who eat beans like Rorschach. Like what?
What? Yeah,
because that was Rorschach. Well, and you were talking about like truth. Like there has to be something real that people can connect with. But like to me, those kind of stories, they end up generally falling flat because they don't have that core of truth in it. You can stretch the truth, you can distort the truth, but it has to have it in some way, shape, or form. And like I remember reading Watchmen for the first time, and Rorschach's in, I can't even remember where it was. It's been so long, but he's in the guy's house and he's eating a can of beans because Alan Moore's got something with beans. But my first thought was, who the hell keeps beans in their house? Like even Southerners, they only have beans in the house when they're going to make it for a barbecue or something.
I'm trying to think if I have beans. Well, I don't think that's that out of the ordinary. I don't know if I have beans in my house, but I mean, I don't think it's that crazy. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that is funny. John Longbox said he wrote this character, which I didn't even see through political runs when I first read it because I read it when I was in like middle school. I just thought the human, which I almost feel like makes you appreciate things more when you don't see things through that, when you just see things as on a human level. But I do still like Watchmen. I think it's very well structured, very well paced.
It is. It's just depressing.
Yeah, but it's not. There's a reason a story like that can only go for 12 issues, right? 12 chapters.
Yeah.
You can't. I wouldn't, if that was an ongoing series, I don't think I could stomach it. It would just, it's too miserable.
Yeah. I don't think Vaughn would know Archie Bunker, John.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do know, actually. I learned about that in my class. I know Archie Bunker. It's all in the family, right?
What? You have a can of beans in your house? I don't believe you, John. Pictures or it didn't happen. So you were mentioning you're reading through Claremont. Who are sort of the people that you really look up to in the comics world? Like who had really great runs that you love?
God, I mean, there's a bunch, man. I love the Claremont's run. Jeff Johns, Jeff Loeb, Frank Miller, Chuck Dixon, Marv Wolfman are probably my top 6. But those are my favorites. I like Mike Barron's stuff, especially after getting to know him. I do intend on reading Nexus. Let's see. Here we go. Right here. I love, Frank Miller's Daredevil run is one of my favorites. I actually think David Wohl did a very good job on Witchblade. Not enough people give him credit because it's more of like an artist book. But Yeah, his stuff is very good. Um, God, my to read pile is so big. Holy crap. Um, yeah, I might try and read some stuff today. Yeah, those are probably my favorites. Jeff Johns, Marv Wolfman, Jeff Loeb, Frank Miller, Chris Claremont, and yeah.
Nice. So do you think that how should I phrase this? A lot of the authors that you're mentioning and the runs that you're talking about, they're a little bit older.
Yes.
It's been a question for the last several years, like what's a modern classic run? Like what do you think happened to modern mainstream comics that we're not really getting any fantastic runs these days?
I've been reading a lot. Apparently, I missed a great one in Scott Snyder's Batman, but I read one issue off the stands and it was horrible. And apparently, it's the worst issue of the run. And so I took the whole thing and it just went like that. I also just didn't like Damian Wayne, but I should have gone back. I think that we're missing one of the things is we're rebooting the universe, especially DC, every 5 seconds. I think that's part of it. I think there's always some event going on, and so I'm like, I do think that it's a problem. Like, and to be fair, I might perpetuate the problem where it's like people always want to pick up a #1 issue, and so I just haven't been picking up issues mid-run. I think that's part of it. I think not knowing where to start is obviously a thing, but I think it's for me. I'm less inclined to support writers who don't treat the fans well. I don't care who they are. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I think, yeah, the continuity stuff is a problem. I think, I mean, when I've tried getting into runs, there's always some sort of weird, to me, I mean, I can't speak to everyone, but to me, it feels like there's always, even in quote unquote really good runs, there's almost always some agenda push stuff, unless it's set back in the day. Like even with the X-Men stuff, I only read like however much of Hickman's run, but there was like Cyclops and Wolverine were in a 3-way cuckold relationship. Iceman, Kitty Pryde was acting like a girl boss. And I was like, what is happening with these characters? Like, what's the point? Because I was like, I'll just read the old stuff if you're going to keep doing this crap. And it was like, it was frustrating. I think that's part of it is like people, you know what it is? I think it's, so there's always been editorial interference, right? It's like the fact that it feels like at any point, someone from the big corporation can come back down and just go, yeah, no, we're going to change the direction of this run. And it's like, well, then what's the point of me getting like how many big runs do you see like Claremont's? I think that's part of it. I think there's there's a few things I want to read. Like I've been told to read Titan Comics, Conan. I've
heard it's good.
Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers, I hear, is very good. Ultimate Spider-Man is apparently really good. The current.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, it seems like most of like the books that people are talking about, like, oh, this is really good. It's at I guess you could still call mainstream, but they're at the smaller publishers, or
they're not Marvel and DC.
Total indie. Yeah. And even, well, no, I guess Image has a few titles now that I've been recommended, but something weird happened at Marvel and DC. I think part of it's the agenda that you're talking about, and for me, it's like the complete lack of editorial standards. Whereas, like, back in the day, you had pretty strong editors who were
mostly writers too. Like a lot of them had writing talent.
Yeah. And they came up through the ranks, and they would really keep the writers in line with like, no, this character wouldn't do that, or, change things like that. Where now it just seems like whatever goes, like there's no consistency in how a character should act or behave.
And they encourage that.
Yeah. Like I made a video years ago that I never published about Hickman's Power of X, House of X. like when it came out, and my thesis was this is a honey trap. They're talking about how we're going back to like traditional X-Men character types and this and that, but in the end, it's that's what's going to suck you in, but it's going to be all the same.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
like,
learned is I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you because
oh
I
no,
could
go
talk,
ahead.
I could talk about that all day. I loved House and Powers of X when I first read it, and I'll tell you why. I knew that there was going to be some big reveal that they're all brainwashed or something because the characters are just they would never do this. And then when I learned that they actually did willingly, as it slowly started to become apparent that this is not up mine, this is actually what I'm like. Okay, I'm out. I was like, the X-Men would not do this. They wouldn't. And I think you're right in that. I think Hickman is a very good writer, but I hate it. I think that the X-Men were destroyed beyond the point of no return. I really do. So people are like, oh, are you excited? Well, the Krakoa age is over. It doesn't matter. They still chose to do that. I can't look at them the same way anymore. It's the same reason. I mean, to a more extreme extent, it's, when even if it was, and this was the result of editorial interference, when Cyclops walked out on Madeline for Jean, and it was a horrible situation to put the character in, but it was like a lot of people just could not get back to that character. And I think that whole bringing Jean back the way they did totally screwed that character, and we're still facing the consequences. Doesn't mean he's never done anything good, but it was handled okay, but it wasn't great. It was like you could tell that they didn't know what to do. It was taken out of Claremont's hands, and they tried to do the best they could with a bad situation. And I think stuff like that can really screw a character. Now, that for the entire X-Men line. Like, I'm supposed to believe that Jean Grey, who's like always been the girl next door type, is now screwing Cyclops and Wolverine while having children. And this is like encouraged as like a good. And then there's these Reddit threads that are like, and we should be embracing. Do it with your own characters, please.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to believe that Wolverine and Cyclops, who have always been like neck and neck, are supposed to like share this girl like a piece of meat. Like and then it's Kitty Pryde acts more immature now than she did when she was literally a 13-year-old, and it's like, really? But they see it as maturity. Cyclops, that's another thing too. So many people, I've had arguments with people who I really get along with about Cyclops, that I think he is a character that's been ruined by postmodernism because they're taking traits of his that were bad or that were good and subverting them to be bad because these people don't understand that they're like, he's boring or he's a jerk. Well, he had to get his team in line, or they'll use examples like, oh, he didn't care when he thought Jean died in the Savage Land. There's that moment. It's like, no, he had to suppress his emotions because he had to get the team through. And so that's a selfless thing to do. And people don't understand that he has to put his emotions aside for the greater good of the team. And there are moments where he breaks down, like when Thunderbird first dies and he has that moment where he goes out. And then because he hits something when he's doing that, he immediately has consequences. In that moment, while it's not a perfect issue, he learns, I can't feel these things. And I think they're ruining it. And you're so spot on with what House and Powers of X it was. And I think that's another thing, the honeypot. You mentioned that, right? Or is that the word used? That every time I think they're about to do something right, I just know that they're going to bait and switch me. And it's like, I don't, that's why I kind of pulled back from all of like this pop culture stuff. Cause every time I'm coming back, I know they're going to do something that pisses me off. Like I know if I'm reading any current series in the big two at any given moment that someone's going to come in and screw me over. Claremont, when I read that, even though it was an order run, I knew, okay, I have 17 years worth of history where this guy, and he did get his editorial bullshit. But first of all, that guy was able to pivot very well given all that. But I know that I have a vision, right, that I can step into. If I start reading a current run, I have no guarantee that they're not going to, for whatever reason, just throw people off the book. And I've talked to industry professionals that have said, yeah, they. I was talking to Peter Tomasi once, and I haven't read his Superman run, but I heard people loved it. They loved John Kent as a kid, and then he created John Kent Jr. and then they had Bendis just come on and they go, hey, we know everyone likes your series, but we're throwing you off for this big name writer. And it was like, what? You just did that like on a whim? And it's messed up, that they do that. That they just at any given point, if something's working out, if someone has a different idea, they'll throw it out there. And I think the magic is kind of, it's almost like they've gotten too big.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like I said, I got into it through the animation and the movies, right? But I always had respect and had this understanding that I think a lot of people don't, that stuff came from somewhere, even well before I read the comics, that there is a pool that came before that must be respected, that must be honored. And eventually when I came back, it was like really cool, because it's like, and especially when I went back and I read some of the original Spider-Man stuff, it was really cool. And the X-Men, when it's really cool seeing everything take form in almost in real time. Like, oh, I got the Gambit. Like, oh, this is where that bit of history. Oh, wow. So Wolverine wasn't his, like, I'm surprised, for example, that his amnesia is a more recent thing. That, like, it's been, I've read his however many years of his publication history, that they've never mentioned that he has memory loss. It was a later idea. Like, that's interesting to me. Not so much.
Do you ever get the feeling that, like, a lot of these classic characters sort of should be put to rest, at least for a while? Like, in some ways, for me, sometimes it feels like modern writers don't know what to do with a character like Superman, or they really don't get Superman. And so maybe they would be decent writers on their own characters, but when they're put in these titles, or even like the X-Men, like I remember reading in Wizard magazine in either like 90 or 91, there was a very big interview with Chris Claremont. And it was right before Jim Lee created his own X-Men series. And in there, Claremont said, when I'm off the book, they should cancel X-Men.
Oh, man, that would have been nice.
I know, right? Because I consider everything after Uncanny X-Men 280 to be fan fiction anyways.
That's what I'm about. I mean, I haven't gotten there yet. I'm at 260. I last read Magic Porno. I got to really just, all right, I'm going to read a couple things on my to-do list, and then I think I'm going to put everything else aside, hunker down on finishing Claremont's run. So I'm going to put aside.
It was a good run.
Finishing, but Claremont's run and all the adjacent titles. So like X Factor. I'm going to read like the Lost Pages for Phil and a couple of other things, and then I'm going to put all that aside for a little bit and finish Claremont's run, and then I can get to Witchblade and all. I have mine's a repile, but anyway, yeah, I think that I kind of consider it that way too. If Claremont's like that was against my vision, I'm like, yes, sir, understood. I think first of all, you know what? If they really, because they're always talking about how every time like let's announce a new X-Men creative team. Like, there's only one name I really care about. Oh, he's not on there. All right, I don't care.
Yeah,
he wants to write X-Men. Like, that's the thing. They're willfully denying him. And it's like, I don't care. Even if you brought in a writer who I really like, I want Claremont. If I was given reins, I'd be like, what does Claremont want to do? He gave me a list. When did he steer us wrong?
Yeah, I know. Well, technically they did bring him back once.
Twice.
Or twice, was it? I know they did that one sort of like alternative universe where they sort of continued from where he left off.
Yeah.
And it kind of never sparked the magic that his original run had.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes things are special just because they're like at the time and the place, and you got like a writer who's really connecting with the artist.
Gotcha. Yeah, I need to get into that. I need to read that. That sounds interesting. But first, I want to finish his run. I don't know. It depends. But I think overall, I mean, look, there's obviously some good stuff that came after him that people like. Like Bishop was after him, right?
Yep.
It was shortly after him, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, right after. I think it was 2 issues after.
Yeah.
And people loved Age of Apocalypse. Yeah. But then I don't know. I had dipped out by that point, and it was the Grant Morrison run that got me out of reading comics for like 10 to 15
years. I've heard
years.
Mixed things on Grant Morrison's run. Some people either love it and some people hate it.
Yeah, to me, Grant Morrison, like I detest his X-Men run. And I detest his Superman run.
See, I loved All-Star Superman.
Oh, really? Oh,
I
no.
thought it was a masterpiece. Why don't you like? I mean, I haven't read that much Superman, to be honest.
Okay, well, it's funny. I have a video that should be coming out soon about the problem with Superman in 2024, but it's the same kind of thing. People get Clark Kent confused. They think that Clark Kent is a nice man. Clark Kent is not a nice man. He's a good man, but he's not a nice man. If you go back and read some of the early issues of Superman, like Superman was, he would go and fight crime when he was assigned to by Perry White. When he was assigned to go like report on something, then he would go fight crime. There's like he's peering in people's windows all the time. He wasn't like Clark Kent is not a guy who really enjoys being Superman. Clark Kent does it because he has a responsibility. He knows that. Okay, so I right now am sitting about 60 minutes away from where Siegel and Schuster wrote Superman.
Oh,
now, if you're a farmer in the middle of Ohio, you have a responsibility. If you're on your farm and there's a fence separating you and your neighbors, and it's your neighbor's fence, if it's broken, you stop and you fix that.
Okay.
Because you are there. There's nobody else. Animals could escape. You have the responsibility to do that. I've got neighbors. They're two old ladies. They're in their 80s. I cut their front lawn because there's a ditch in their front yard and they can't push them over there. So I just mow it. Not because I want to. I would rather get done with the grass faster, but I do it because they're two ladies in their 80s,
Right.
It's my responsibility to help them. That's what's missing. It's they have this weird fetish where Clark Kent flies around town looking for kittens in a tree. Right. And it's not that he ignores people in trouble, but back in the day, Superman was happy to let cops, capture criminals. He would do the stuff that normal people couldn't do. Like in the first issue, he outs a corrupt senator. He stops a war between two Latin American countries that was being propped up by the industrial military complex. And he disguises himself to pretend to be a boxer who was being forced to take dives. Like that's the kind of guy he was. He wasn't just he wasn't this existential mess. My problem with Grant Morrison is I saw an interview with Grant where he was talking about how he came up with the idea. And that was he and an artist. I don't remember if it was Quietly or who it was, but he was at San Diego Comic-Con and the con was over and he was outside and they saw a guy dressed like Superman and they were like, "Hey, Superman, let's go get a drink." And the guy went with them. And so in the bar, the guy dressed as Superman goes, "Lois doesn't understand me." And that made it in the book, right? And so that got Grant Morrison thinking, but that's like some California sad sackery. I lived in Los Angeles for 12 years, and like that's a very California mentality to have. That is not how people in the Midwest think, and that is not the classic Superman value. So that's
I need
part
to
of my
spend more time in the Midwest, dude. Sounds like you guys are good
fun.
people.
Yes, and it's very cheap cost of living.
That sounds nice.
Highly recommended. But yeah, like to me, that's the difference. And it's one problem when you have foreigners write the character because they don't understand that. But even when you have people who live on the coasts, most don't really understand Midwestern mentality either. So to them, it's like, oh, he's just a nice guy who goes around helping people. He's not Jesus. He's got his own things. Like he'd rather be hanging out, tailgating outside an Adams game. He really wants to get with Lois, but he can't for various reasons.
Mm-hmm. So I need to read. I haven't read much Superman in all honesty. All-Star Superman I did really like. I remember when I was in my comic shop. I thought it was fantastic, but I know some people don't like it. I thought it was great. I thought it was very idealistic, which is what I liked about it. It didn't feel, it felt very reflective, and I don't know, I liked it a lot. But that's interesting that he was like, he was called on assignments. He didn't just seek stuff. And I guess that's what my superhero does, is he seeks something out. He wasn't called, but he goes, I have a calling. I have to jump into this thing. And it's like, it wasn't his fight. And I guess he needs to learn that, hey, maybe you weren't called there because you actually were gonna, it doesn't matter if your intentions were good, you were gonna make the situation work. And so I think he's kind of realizing that being a superhero isn't just about, it's more complicated than just doing what you think is the right thing or helping people. And I think that was one of the ideas I wanted to drive home, is that there's more complexity to that.
Yeah. So how does he find out about these things? Is he like listen to a police scanner? Does he have like a Commissioner Gordon who's putting out the bat signal for him? How does he, he wants to make a difference. How does he try to find the best ways to make a difference? Let's put it that way.
So in issue 1, because this is his origin, and he's not quite where he wants to be. Later on, there will be much better, more organized, more efficient structure, and he'll actually be qualified once he earns that. But in issue 1, he sees that there's a reactor heist going on TV, and he's like, oh, I got to do something about that. And his best friend is like, no, you don't. That's not a good idea. And naturally, he ignores the voice of reason from his friend, and he rushes in. But he finds out about it through the news, and he thinks, I can make a difference. Is really where it boils down to in issue 1.
So, as a first-time writer, how was it for you working with an artist?
It was interesting. I found that communication is key. There's some times where like you realize that if your artist will move much faster if you don't direct them. And sometimes I'm trying to find that balance between over directing and just letting them do their thing. But sometimes I do find that the revisions I have them do make it better, oftentimes. But other times it's like I have to just learn to let them go with the flow. And I think but I think it's also finding our flow. It's the collaboration aspect, right? I think like Claremont, it seems like he just kind of wrote and then the artist drew, and then he wrote around it. I was much more specific in my script, general in other areas. So I think it's a lot of communication is important between me and my artist. And I'd say communication for me is very key, and finding that balance between just letting things go and having a specific vision are crucial, and realizing that sometimes something being different from your vision is okay and you just need to move on. And sometimes, you do want to be clear on, I do want this changed. And that's that back and forth. I think that there's balance. Sometimes you need to just roll with things and sometimes not. And
Well, I guess we'll see if he comes back or not. I don't know exactly what happened, but here we go.
Sorry about that. I actually collaboration in itself.
Oh no. All right. Well, for anyone who's interested, pinned in the chat, we have the link on the or on the Fund My Comic, and there should be a link down in the description as well, if anybody wants to back it. So sorry.
No, I'm the one who's sorry. I was just like messing with something in my keyboard. I saw some dust. I was doing that, and then I hit the button. Anyway, what I was saying was, where was I? You were asking about
how you
the collaboration.
Yeah, the collaboration.
I learned to kind of get better at just accepting things is one of the things I'm learning on, and not being as hands-on. But also sometimes being hands-on is good. But things move faster, surprisingly, not really, but like when you have things, and also planning things out is good. You got to find that balance. And also I think sometimes it's good. It's like, I don't know what this is going to look like. Sometimes it's okay to just the artist will figure it out. Sometimes it's okay to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, communication, I'd say. There's a lot of little things and it also really will depend on the page. Sometimes you don't need. I think I'm really trying to get better at just letting things go. It's almost like I feel the need to add something when they draw the art. And it's like, no, I already wrote the script. If it looks good, that's it. Move on is one thing I'm getting better at. And the book is moving faster, of course, when I relax more. So that's one of the things I'm learning is just to kind of to get better at taking my hand off, but not completely, because otherwise I might be neglectful. But taking my hand, but I'm also learning that it's easier to just revise my words than the art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say, for a first-time creator, the art is surprisingly good. I've seen a lot of campaigns come and go throughout the years, and usually the first time art could be a little better, but for me, this is really firing on all cylinders. Philip Cruz does a great job, and normally I always bitch and moan about colors, but Jesse, I mean, I gotta say these colors look pretty good.
Jesse's colors. Finding a colorist, I found finding an artist was something I had to be very, especially with finding my first artist. I'm glad I took as long as I did. Same for the colorist. I'm glad I took as long as I did because it was worth the wait. Jesse is so good. They're both so good.
Yeah, they're I think everybody loves this one here.
Yes. I gained a bunch of signups that day that I tweeted that image.
But even something like this team shot, which oftentimes can be very boring.
Yeah.
Love the colors. The artwork looks great. Like this reminds me of the old you get the fold out cover that that would have the what do you call it? The 4-panel extra large team picture on it.
Yeah. I was very happy with how that came out. I remember we had played around with, are they going to be silhouettes? Are they going to be shown? Are they going to, and I had a vibe for it, and I sent some reference images, and this is what my artists and my colors came up with. So I wrote a lot for that, and I paid this double page spread, probably the most expensive in terms of, because I had to pay for character designs.
Mm-hmm.
I had to pay for, eventually my artist, it was like, okay, do you want me to just hire some other people? That's another thing, realizing that if you want to take time and perfect things, that you're going to have to hire other people. So, I did, realizing that, okay, you can get everything you want, but it's going to take more time and money. Finding that balance, communication is everything. And sometimes you need to just let things go, I guess. So learning a lot, like I said, other issues will not take nearly this long because I am learning every step of the way in this process. So what I'm building is really solid foundation. And so, yes, everything is taking very long, but we're almost there. We have 38 pages colored, 50 pages penciled and inked, although it's looking like I'm about to get 53 finalized. So
nice.
10 have been lettered. I realized I didn't have an issue number on the covers, so I'm going to figure that out.
Okay. So when, the campaign is going on now, when do you think you'll be ready to ship the books out?
I mean, I would love to have it in people's hands in July or August, but we'll see if that happens. But I put September for the date just to be safe. But ideally, I would love to have it in people's hands before then. At the rate we're going, I think we could, get it in people's hands at a decent pace.
Very nice. So you're on Fund My Comic. What level do you recommend a new buyer, someone new to comic books?
New to comics. That's a good question. I mean, I would say back one of the either the main or variant, really, whatever. Just back, honestly, just get a copy if you want. If you want more than one, up to you. If you it's up to you if you want to collect one or if you just want more than one. But I would get at least one cover if you're new. But also it depends. I've had people that have never bought a comic before that have gotten like all of it. So it really depends on how excited you are. But I would get at least one if you want to have a special one in case you want to sell one off and still have a copy. I'd get two. And just what cover do you like? Really is what it boils down to.
Ah, nice. So we've got the main cover. We've got
Sukeisha Ray.
Sukeisha. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
The Final Fantasy homage cover and the Irene Strakowski, aka Rini Draws
cover. Yeah, and it's not yet
cover.
It's not yet colored, but there you go.
Nice. All
and if it gets to 15K, that double page spread that we like there will become a mini print.
Oh, very cool. So like a mini poster that'll come in with the books?
Yeah, mini print. It'll just be like a little 6x9, but still.
Oh, 6x9. Okay. Nice. All right. Well, I know you've got a bunch of things to do. So I don't want to keep you too long.
This has been great. Flew by.
I know, right?
I'd love to talk again. Also, this has been a fun show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'd love to have you come on by. Maybe next time we'll see if John's Lawn Box can join us too.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, that's a good man. He's been with us in the chat.
Yep.
Good guy.
Yeah. All right. So everyone, if you're into superheroes, you're into, would you call it somewhat of a coming of age story as well?
Yeah, I would say it's coming of age. Yeah.
Yeah. So check out PHENOMENOVA. Link is pinned to the chat and should be in the description, which I will double check in a couple of minutes if it's not there now. And go back on Fun My Comic. So on Thursday evening, 8:00 Eastern time, Fabrizio Aiello, who was also in the chat, author, artist on Horace H. Hoover, will be with me, and maybe one other surprise guest during the week. So thanks for stopping by, everyone. Thanks for coming, Vaughn. And
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys soon.
Yes, thank you.